Hey, and thanks for Crux Investors having us on for this interview. I'm Ron Clayton. I'm the president and CEO of 1911 Gold. I have with me today Dr. Scott Anderson, who is our VP of Exploration. And we'd like to focus a little bit on the exploration opportunities of our land package. 1911 Gold is about 3.5 years old, 4 years old. It was born out of the merger between Klondex and Hecla Mining Company. These assets were spun out to the Klondex shareholders and became Hecla Mining Company, which is now 1911 Gold. The thing that's a bit unique about us from an exploration standpoint is we have a very large land package, over 50,000 hectares, in a very underexplored portion of the Red Lake Greenstone Belt. It's the western extension of the Red Lake Greenstone Belt. Underexplored for a lot of reasons, primarily a very disjointed land tenure or ownership over a long period of time. But the idea here is we've got just fantastic greenstone targets that I'll let Scott describe to you. We have a fully operational mill and tailings facility and camp that's all permitted and ready to go. So a discovery is going to result in a very quick reentry into and an inexpensive reentry into production. So it's a really unique opportunity for an exploration company. So that's kind of the story of 1911.
Great. Ron, Scott, really nice to meet you. Thank you very much for making the time to join me on this. I'm really looking forward to this discussion because there's so much that I want to know about the geology within your land package. Now, Ron, or perhaps Scott as well, but kind of the first question is you've raised a fair bit of money over the last couple of years, and you had a really active exploration season last year. Before we get into what you're going to be looking at for next year, can you kind of summarize what the work was last year and where you got to in the kind of the exploration program for 2021?
Well, the way we do things here and what we've done in the past few years is to really focus on putting in a solid summer field season, which typically runs from late April until beginning of October. So this is, classic boots on the ground geological work, geological mapping, prospecting, official geochemistry. That really, in some of these areas of this belt have not been explored systematically previously. So it's really going in there and doing this first pass type work, looking at the geology. We overlay this information with high resolution Aeromag data, which we've acquired, and we've also got historical data sets as well. One of the first steps we did as an exploration company was to merge and level the historical data. We've got a great high resolution Aeromag database for the belt. We've also followed that up with really high resolution 25-meter line spacing UAV mag surveys. And another important tool for us is LiDAR. To help us hone in on these structures. So using these data sets and the field work, very strong focus on field exploration. So 2021 was no different. This past field season as well. Generating new targets in areas of the belt that haven't been systematically explored previously. And then we typically follow up these field programs with a winter drill program. In the case of last year, we drilled about 17,000 meters. Testing, I believe it was 14 different targets across 5 different project areas within this very large land package, this 58,000 hectare land package.
Can I just unpack that a bit? Absolutely. So the 17,000 meters of drilling. The 17,000 meters of drilling, was that done in the winter season? So from the end of 2020 through the first 4 months of 2021, using the frozen ground to get the rigs on without sinking into the mush?
That's the most effective way for us and the cost-effective way for us to drill, to get in. Some of these areas we can access when the ground's not frozen. But for the most part, it's more efficient to do the drilling in the winter for exactly the reason you mentioned. It makes access quite easier. In the case of and I don't want to skip too far ahead here, but we'll be doing some helicopter supported work in this round of drilling simply because it wasn't feasible to get into some of these areas.
Okay, but the 17,000 meters you mentioned that, when did that finish? When did the last drilling get
finished
done?
In March of 2021.
Okay, I'm just putting things in context because you had a great share price run in the middle of the year, and it's kind of given it back in the second half of the year. So I just wondered what was driving that? Was that drill results from March, and that the kind of the drill results came out, and that kind of helped the share price come up? And I know the markets have been tough. But
Yes, that's exactly what happened in the first quarter of last year. Is we had some really nice drill results, and things started to get kind of exciting. I wouldn't say that we had a discovery, but certainly we had some things that were coming together, and we hadn't drilled tight enough to get any continuity, but certainly we had some things that the market got excited about, and well should have, because I was very excited about it. Then our last set of drill results didn't quite hold that same deal, and I wasn't surprised because it was a different area that the last results came out by. And then of course the market was bad in the rest of the year, and we kind of fell with everybody else.
Okay, and then the other question that immediately jumped out at me was you talked about doing the kind of field work in the summer. What's the visibility of the geology like in the area? I mean, you have got glacial till. What's the cover and the outcrop situation? How much can you actually map with eyeballs?
Yes, it's highly variable. In the eastern portion of our land package, the outcrop coverage is generally quite good. I'm going to say between 40 and 50% in general. And that's something you've seen historically in this belt, is that everything that's been discovered to date has been exposed on surface. So we're looking at some of the more challenging areas. As you move towards the west in the belt, the glacial cover gets quite a bit more extensive, continuous. There's a blanket in low-lying areas, which, as you know, are typically the major structures in these greenstone type settings. There's a blanket of glacial lacustrine clay that's really kind of hindered previous exploration. So we're focusing on some of these areas that have flown under the radar historically because of lesser exposure, but have the same types of geology, the same types of structures, favorable host rocks, and so forth. And show potential for significant gold deposits.
And do you do till sampling or bottom of till sampling? Do you kind of go down with a small rig and do base of till sampling, or is that not something that you can do in this area?
It's something that's actually been tried historically in this belt. And when you actually go through the data and look at it, what you often found is they would get to the base of till and it would be glacial lacustrine clay. So they would sample that material, but it's really telling you nothing about the bedrock in that location. So what we're actually, and what we've had good success doing, is vegetation geochemistry. We do humus and we do black spruce bark. The rationale being that the root systems are penetrating through this glacial lacustrine clay, tapping or some sort of geochemical signature from the bedrock. And this is giving us what I believe to be our best chance of getting, a true bedrock signature in some of these areas of thicker cover.
Wow, and I was going to ask you whether soil geochemistry works in the area, because in Australia, of course, the exploration undercover has been transformed in the last 2 or 3 years with the reduced cost of soil geochemistry. But you're not going that route. You're going with the vegetation geochemistry. I mean,
yes.
Yep. Wow, and good results.
Yes. So we obviously did, starting out, we had some previous work that was done in the belt that demonstrated humus in particular was a good sample media. But we of course did our orientation surveys over known gold mineralized areas, and were able to confirm that we can generate anomalies over these known gold bearing structures. And then that's been our principal geochemical technique so far. In addition to, we obviously do whole rock geochemistry and lithogeochemistry as well to look for alteration signatures.
The other thing I think is really important to hear is that if you take all of these things that you guys have just been talking about in context and put them together, they do a really good job of pointing to the right drill targets for this team. And in 2020, 21 out of 22 drill holes all hit gold, some of them even ore grade gold, but we hit mineralization in almost every single hole we drilled. 2021 was not quite that successful, but it was still a plus 75% success rate. So this works is the point.
And Scott, could you pull up a map? Because I'd like to orientate myself just to kind of get a regional picture of your kind of tenement holdings, because it's a big land package.
Yep. So this might be the most efficient map to have up.
And so you've done 2 seasons of drilling on this. You've done 2020 and 2021, and I've seen in some of your presentation materials that you talk about the gold being concentrated in kind of the regional folds. There's a very strong structural component to this kind of fluid flow. It's concentrated down shears and in fold hinges, and that you've used that as an exploration tool as well. And you've mapped the geology with the geochemistry and the geology that you can see, and tying it in with the geophysics. And when you've targeted those specific zones, that's where you've had more success.
So what we're looking at here is the heavy gray line there is the outline of our mineral dispositions. That's a 58,000 hectare land package. It's a contiguous land package, which, consolidation in this district. And that's a big part of the story for this belt is historically the land position was extremely fragmented. A lot of kind of small players, prospectors and so forth. Very limited budgets, very limited scope of exploration. So beginning about 10 years ago under Sandgold, continuing through the Klondex years, and certainly with our work, both in terms of ground staking and some acquisitions, we've consolidated everything into one now contiguous land package that really allows us to explore this greenstone belt in a way that hasn't been done historically, and really give it a fair shake here. So as you mentioned, structure is key. That's a major, I'm a structural geologist by training, and that's a major tool that we use to identify prospective areas within this very large land position.
Can I just ask, so you've plotted the rock samples that you've got, and there are clusters of rock samples. Now, is that a function of that you've explored the area and there's no outcrop, or that you haven't explored the area yet?
In some cases, particularly in the far western portion, it's a reflection of just a absence of outcrop. In other areas, it's just areas that we haven't gotten to yet. I would emphasize as well that all of the gold showings on here are from our work. We've obviously compiled previous work as well. But I think this map does a good job of kind of demonstrating the areas where we focused on to date. And just the fact that we're consistently turning up, anomalous to locally very high grade gold in a number of different areas. And we identify the project areas initially, obviously through interpretation of the LiDAR and Aeromag data, again, honing in on these areas of structural complexity, and then obviously follow that up with the field work. It's been a successful methodology to date.
Now, in your most recent exploration update, you shout out, you give a shout out to 3 project areas or 3 target areas. You talk about Wallace, you talk about Bidou, and then you mentioned that there's a good result from some high grade gold from Curry's Landing, but you don't talk about the project. And I also see that just from this slide here, you're going to be drilling 2 clusters down at Tinney. It was so can you just kind of describe to me what you found at Wallace, Bidou and Curry's Landing, and what you're looking at Tinney as well?
Well, Tinney and Bidou are the areas that we've done the bulk of our drilling to date. These are actually 2 of the initial areas we went into when we acquired the property. They just screamed out for additional work because the geology there is extremely favorable. So we've gone about testing a number of structural targets there, had very encouraging results from drilling to date. So we're going to be following that up in the next round of drilling. We're stepping out along strike and testing these things to greater depth within kilometer scale structures that we've been able to confirm through drilling. Wallace is going to be our first pass drilling there in this program. All the results to date there are based on field work that we've completed in 2020 and 2021. So we've advanced that project to the state where we have a number of different targets there. that are drill ready, and that's what we'll be looking at. And beginning in March, we'll have a helicopter supported drill program in at Wallace there. In terms of Curry's Landing, we're not quite at drill stage there yet. We're still acquiring data, as the slide indicates. We've got an IP geophysical survey going on currently. Again, not a lot of exposure there. And particularly the main structure we're looking at there is a large-scale fold structure dissected by faults. It's unexposed. So we're using the IP geophysics to identify areas of chargeability and resistivity anomalies, obviously, within that structure to move that Curry's Landing project towards drill stage. There's no record of historical drilling in this area. And I'd also emphasize that all the gold showings shown on the map here in that Curry's Landing project area came about through our work. There was no known gold occurrences in that area prior to us starting.
Pound Maker looks quite tasty as well.
Yes, so we've done a fair amount of field work there. Our thinking on that has kind of evolved from we started working there in 2019. Again, in 2020, we put in 9 drill holes, relatively short holes on some really decent structures that we were able to map on surface, localized high grade within them. But quite compelling targets. There's a historical gold producer up in that area, quite high grade, close to half ounce material, historical grade at that past producer. Confirmed the structures in the drilling, but really didn't get much joy in terms of gold grades. But we're starting to look at some of the more major structures in that area as well, particularly to the north, where you start to see some gold values showing up along kind of major map scale features that are associated with ultramafic, intrusive, and possibly extrusive rocks along major structural features. So our thinking there has kind of evolved, and we're still continuing to work that project.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Now, you mentioned quite often in speech, you talk about kind of testing the structures, but I'm not sure where I read it, but you're also looking for the kind of intrusions and the porphyry related, looking at kind of bulk tonnage targets as well. How has your exploration targeted that? And have you had any indications of mineralized bulk tonnage outside of the structures?
Well, in the case of the Tinny project, it's hosted in a quartz feldspar porphyry intrusion, and we've had a mix of results there. But one of the things that's strongly encouraging to us is just the fact that the porphyry ranges up to about 100 meters in thickness in places, and we've had a number of high grade hits in there over relatively narrow intervals, 2.5 to half meter type material, but locally very high grade, associated with compact shear structures. But on the margins of these shears, you have these very pervasive sheeted vein systems with alteration and sulfide mineralization that are consistently anomalous in gold. And
are they also deformed? And are they quite coeval, quite old systems, or are they more recent?
In terms of the timing of the shallow veins, well, let me back up a bit here. What we've seen in all the drilling that we've done to date is oriented core drilling. So what we've seen actually at Tinny is there's relatively steep shear structures and relatively shallow vein systems as well. It's the steep structures, they're shear type veins, laminated veins, relatively high grade. And then off the margin of these things, you have these arrays of sheeted veins that are relatively shallow dipping that locally contain high grade gold as well. But it's basically the entire volume of the porphyry there that is altered and mineralized. So we're continuing to test that target, both the higher grade portions, looking for high grade shoots within this complex structural network within that porphyry intrusion, but also looking at getting information closer to surface that might support a bulk tonnage type model. that target.
Have you had success in that porphyry? You talk about it being mineralized, but have you had indications of it sustaining, I don't know, half gram material or 1 gram material or 0.3 gram material across kind of thick distances, or has it tended to be pretty concentrated into the vein sets and the associated array of mineralized sheets?
Yeah, I would say that there's large intervals within there. I'm talking, 15 to 20 meters of, 0.3 gram type material in that porphyry. You'll have a run of assays within it that's, anywhere from, 100 parts per billion to half gram type material quite consistently. You'll also get little high grade hits within those kind of more pervasively mineralized volumes, often associated with visible gold. You get clusters of visible gold within some of these vein systems. So it's really it's very complex structurally. You also have structures that extend out into the country rock, and those have different orientations as well. So we've done a fair amount of drilling there now. We've got good data from the oriented core work that we do. We have a fairly robust 3D model, including a block model for the vein systems that we've intersected to date. And we're using that information to drill going forward, particularly in this next phase of drilling, to really start testing these things with maximum efficiency using the information we have at hand.
But you've got it right. We're actually looking for both kinds of deposits here, right? Bidou and Tenney in particular demonstrate the possibility for some bulk tonnage at Tenney, as well as Bidou probably looks a little bit more like the historic Rice Lake deposit, which produced 2 million ounces so far. So,
and when you get excited about a vein set, what kind of thicknesses and grades are you able to kind of see over, I don't know, 50-meter lengths or strikes and things? What are you targeting? What constitutes success?
Well, at the first pass of drilling, because most of these structures aren't exposed on surface. So in the first pass of drilling that we do, it's like, can we confirm the structure? What's the width of the structure? Are we seeing alteration in the structure that, of an intensity or style that is consistent with the type of mineralization we see elsewhere in the belt? Do we see complexity in the vein systems? So even if the veins are particularly thick, are they showing evidence of kind of a multi-phase emplacement history, which is really what you need to generate these big deposits. You need repeated pulses of fluid flow through these structures to generate significant ore bodies. So, as a first pass, is the structure there? Are we seeing the alteration? Are we seeing veining? Are we seeing complexity within that veining? Are we seeing sulfide mineralization within it? And then from there, we start, okay, well, what are the width of these things? And I mean, the things that get me excited are seeing these, well-developed veins with evidence of complexity within, a structure, 5 to 10 meters in scale with strong alteration associated with it. It points towards a robust mineral system. And once we start to see those things, which we have at Bidou and Tenney, then you start following up, obviously, with more detailed drilling, both testing along strike and to depth.
I'm guessing that you're responsible for the inclusion in the presentation of the mineral systems, the mineral endowment, the Zipf's law, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, I mean it really speaks to as you know, that's been applied quite effectively for the Yarn Craton in Australia and in the Abitibi as well. And in that analysis that's on our corporate deck, that includes both Red Lake and Rice Lake. So Red Lake, is a world-class gold camp. Seen a lot of exploration. There's a lot going on there now. But it just underscores how really, on a global scale, how underexplored these greenstone belts still are. Like you can have a Great Bear type discovery right underneath the main highway going into Red Lake.
So I've got two questions. One is that I've seen reference to thicknesses of 12 to 15 meters in historic. Was that Red Lake or was that Rice Lake?
I think that was the Rice Lake deposit that we referred to there.
So you're looking for kind of those 12 to 15 meter thicknesses. And when you see visible gold in core, do you kind of have a mental calibration yet for what that's going to translate to in grade? Of course, I'm not going to hold you to it, but do you kind of think, oh, this is 1 ounce material or half an ounce material?
No, it's very, I mean, these deposits are so nuggety. It's very, I mean, obviously it's when you see visible gold, you know, you're encouraged by it, right? But no, it'd be very difficult to kind of predict grade from any visual estimate. For me, it's an encouraging sign. Obviously, there's gold in the system, and it fits with what was found historically in this belt, as well as as well as Red Lake. Is that you know, it's the ore bodies that have been mined are relatively compact, very high grade structures. In the case of True North, pardon me. In the case of True North, the deposit actually consists of two different vein sets. There's a relatively narrow, high grade vein sets, shear type veins, and then there's these stockwork breccia systems that are quite a bit wider. So historically, ore bodies in the mine here would be like 1 meter to 1.5 meters for the shear veins, and then the stockwork zones would range up to 20 meters in width in places.
I guess that's what you need to get the bulks, to get the tons up, to get the ounces up. You need to they kind of sweetened by the high grade structures, but kind of carried by the widths and the tons of a larger resource base.
The interesting thing for us is with the infrastructure that we have in place already, that's paid for and operating and permitted, the hurdle rate is lower than you would consider for, you know, most of these kinds of exploration opportunities.
So, do you have therefore a kind of a minimal viable economic resource that you talk about internally? Do you think 250,000 ounces and we can push the button, or is it 400,000 ounces?
Yeah, what I've said to shareholders is if we can put together a 250,000 ounce resource that's, you know, 8 to 10 gram kind of stuff, even if it's fairly narrow, even if it's, you know, say 2 to 2 meters, especially if we believe that it's the tip of the iceberg, that's enough to get rolling.
Great. So what's the target? What's the plan for this year? You know, what are you drilling? Where are you putting your drill meters, and the model that you'll be chasing on those various exploration projects?
I'll share these screen again here. So we're looking at a number of different targets. We're focusing at least in Q1 2022 on the eastern portion of our Rice Lake land package, in particular following up work done in the Tinny and Bidou project areas, as well as testing a number of new targets that we've developed in those areas. And then, as I mentioned, first pass drilling on new targets that we've generated in the Wallace Lake project area. So that'll be the focus of drilling in our Rice Lake projects. Don't want to go through this table in too much detail, but we've laid out of about 11,000 meters of priority 1 targets within these project areas. So we're looking at 3 different project areas in there, 18 different targets, and we'll have up to 4 rigs turning here by the beginning of March in these project areas. And really, the focus is on in the Tinny project area, following up on the results we've had to date in the northernmost portion of this porphyry intrusion that extends along strike for about 2.5 kilometers. We've only looked at about a 1.2 kilometer segment of it to date in our drilling. So we'll be following up at what we refer to as that Edna Otter target. Really, in that case, we've got a tier of shallow drill holes in here, kind of infill type drilling to test the continuity of the vein structures we've intersected to date, as well as from our modeling, we've got some indications of higher grade mineralized shoots that will be tested with deeper drilling, as well as we've got some step out drill holes to the north to really test this thing down to, the 400 plus meter depth, which historically in this district is in the case of the True North mine, for example, is where the mineralized zones really blossomed out. And that's, 300 to 400 plus meter range, perhaps having something to do with the regional level of erosion. But we certainly don't want to walk away from any targets here in this belt without having, tested them to depth if we're getting encouragement closer to surface.
Right, I'm getting distracted by the geology here. Is that the Gunner porphyry, that kind of grayish
pink unit down here?
No, that's okay. That's the Gunner porphyry, which seems to be almost on the axial plane to a wider regional fold.
Yes, it's it's an area that, and all the historical drill holes are on this map. Those are the black dots here that show up in places. At the very southern tip of the porphyry, there's a historic producer, the Gunner Mine, which produced about 100,000 ounces of gold back in the 1930s. But there's no record of historical drilling on the northern part of this porphyry. As you mentioned, it's in the core of a regional scale fold structure. It's an anticline. It's a doubly plunging anticline, so it's a regional dome type structure, which, as many of the world-class gold camps elsewhere in the world are associated with these major fold structures. Great host rocks here. We've got tholeiitic basalts in green, iron tholeiitic gabbro sills in brown. So fantastic structural setting, great host rocks, and again, no record of previous systematic drill testing. So we've generated, we went in, we generated some targets quite quickly in this area, which we've tested in our phase 1 and phase 2 drilling. We'll follow that up in our next round of drilling here, but we also continue to generate new targets. Black Bear, Big Mac, and Victoria are new targets. Haven't been drill tested previously, and this will be part of this Q1 2022 drill program there. So we always want to be adding new targets to the portfolio here. It's a question of, you have to systematically work your way through some of these project areas, consistently generate targets, test them. This gives us obviously the best chance of success on these programs is, testing as many targets as possible.
Now, just on the previous slide, you said that you've got about 11,000 meters of, in fact, there we go. You've got 11,000 meters more or less of priority 1 drilling. And then you've got it's at an additional 5,500 meters of priority 2.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. Okay. So you've got the budget to do 16,000 meters of drilling. That's funded. Yes. And when's the plan to, if you're going to have 4 rigs by March, when do you think you're going to have completed the 16,000 meters of drilling?
Well, by the end of March, we will have that 11,000 meters of drilling done, and then the 16,000 meters will be following up on results from the first pass drilling that we're doing in Q1. Some of this drilling will take place in the summer. Some of it will take place in the fall as well. So, as I say, we're fully funded for the program, and don't anticipate, certainly, there's no shortage of viable drill targets in this belt. So we're going to continue to, we'll have a full field program again in 2022, fully anticipate on generating viable drill targets there as well. So there'll be additional drilling that comes out of that field work.
Will you, I don't know what the assay turnaround time is like in Canada at the moment, but will you send some of the rigs home in May and stick with 1 rig, or is that to be decided?
Typically, what we've done in the past is we're working with Major Drilling. Their major operations base is in Winnipeg, so it's about a 2-hour drive south of the project area here. So what we've done is leave at least 1 drill at site, so we can turn things around relatively quickly and follow up on good results. As the drilling warrants, we can get back into some of these areas. But we're going to, with the budget we have in place and the targets in front of us, is going to be a very drill heavy 2022 for us. So we would look at a summer program as well as a fall 2022.
Great. And how exciting. So you've got 16,000 meters. Was that just tinny, and or was that all of your drilling? I pulled.
Sorry, I have additional targets there. We're going to be following up at Bidou as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a few slides I can quickly share here.
So in total, Ron, how much drilling are you going to be doing in the next 6 months?
Somewhere between 11 and 16,000 meters, okay. But yeah. But it's as Scott said, it's going to be at Tinny, Bidou, Wallace Lake, and then we're actually doing a little bit at Apex, which is not in the Rice Lake district. It's up to the north a ways.
Yeah. So this is a slide just quickly showing what we're up to at Bidou, showing the drilling we've done to date. Again, consistently hitting gold mineralization in here along large-scale structures, almost all of which had never been recognized previously. This has all come about through our interpretation of LiDAR, geophysical data, as well as the field work. So we're continuing to test targets there, stepping out along strike in the case of this Bidou shear target, following up on results from the phase 1 and phase 2 programs, but also testing. Got evidence of a nice higher grade mineralized shoot here, very similar in kind of scale and style to what was mined historically at True North. So we'll be stepping out and testing that both along strike and down plunge along that mineralized trend there at Bidou South. We've got a number of additional targets to the north, following up on field work. In some areas, in this example here, in the northern part of the Bidou project area, a couple of projects right along the margin of a large-scale intrusion in the belt. There's another body of porphyry in here, which is referred to as the Walton porphyry. No record of historical drilling there. Got some nice high-grade hits on surface associated with well-developed structures. We'll be testing some first pass drilling on the Walton as well as the El Dorado project here. And then again, the Wallace project, a number of high-grade gold showings on surface here, again in areas with no record of historical drilling. This is a really exciting project because it really brings home the similarities between the Rice Lake Belt and the Red Lake Belt in terms of geology. The rocks in this area are equivalent to the Balmer assemblage at Red Lake. It's a sequence of komatiites, iron thallitic basalts, iron formations. It's the age, and stratigraphic equivalent to the Balmer assemblage. And we focused on a regional scale fold structure, which is indicated by the red line here. Very similar in a lot of respects to the high grade zone at Red Lake. And we're focusing on initial drilling of some targets that we've developed along kind of large scale shear structures associated with that regional scale fold in Balmer equivalent type stratigraphy. Again, a really exciting target for us. And just to finish up on what's gonna, what to expect in Q1 here, we're also going to be drilling up at the Apex project, which is in the Snow Lake area. World-class gold district. Obviously base metal district as well. We're right next door to a project being actively worked by Kinross Gold, the Laguna project. This project came about, it was held by a company called Bison Gold that was acquired by Klondex. So we kind of inherited this property, took a look at it through some initial field programs, did a high resolution deep penetrating IP survey, generated some really compelling geophysical targets in there, which correspond and confirm quite nicely areas of historically known gold mineralization on surface. So we've got a 2,500 meter program planned in there as well to do, again, first pass drilling on these new targets that we've generated at Apex. So yeah, it's going to be a busy 3 months here in terms of, or 4 months in terms of drilling to start the year off for 1911.
Great, Scott. Thank you so much. I feel much better informed now about the geology that you've got in your portfolio. Ron, have I missed anything? What would you like to emphasize that I haven't spoken about?
Yeah, I think the one other thing that's really an exciting new turn for us is that we had in this last financing a major new shareholder come on board who is an operating company looking to expand their portfolio. So at this point, they don't want to be named, but I think it's a huge development for us, and it's we've had enough inquiries by other companies that have looked at the data and that kind of thing. And while, this is the first one to jump, it certainly tells me that it's validating what we're seeing in the geology, and it's validating the work we're doing. So I'm excited to have a really new strategic partner in our portfolio.
How much did they
just under 10%?
Okay, yeah, so they remain secret. They remain on. That's fine.
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you both so much. It's been a real pleasure hearing the story and talking to you both.
Thank you. It's kind of very exciting.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the updates, Scott. Well, and Ron. I'll keep a watching brief on those news releases, and I'll keep my eyes out for those first exploration results.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.